You guys must have been giving Clayton a hard time or something. He was in here for a while. I was pacing out there, anticipating coming in. So it's good to see everybody. In many ways, it feels like that win over Clemson was eons ago, but it still feels great, right? I think every fan, every player, every coach, everybody associated with the university, and I'm sure even some of you guys, while you have to be unbiased and all that, it was just such a special, sweet win to be a part of, and I think everybody deserves one of those once in a while. And we still have a ways to go as we build the program here, but it's really cool to see how those last two wins sort of solidify that you're going about things the right way and that you're getting some meaningful results and your plan is working. So those are two late season wins where we battled back from a lot of adversity earlier in the month, and I think everybody associated with the program here should feel good about it and just trust the process and trust the road that we're going down and how we're trying to do things the right way. And I've said to you before how impressed I am with Shane's leadership. It was just really satisfying to see how the whole organization stayed the course and was able to find a way to overcome that adversity and win those two last games. So, and then here we are a few weeks later, and it feels like in a lot of ways so much has changed, right? We've had our early signing day, and what tremendous results we got there, and just another great example of the teamwork that goes on here in this building, from head coach to the different department heads to the position coaches to the area coaches to all the people behind the scenes that help logistics, and when these young men come on campus, our players who host, and our wives who get around these families when they're here. It really is a team effort, and when you see a great class put together like yesterday, there really are a lot of people involved in making that happen. We got a new OC on board, right? Excited about that. We get selected for an excellent historic bowl in a great location. And then we have in many ways, a very different roster and a different lineup going into this game, and our opponent will too. So when I started in this profession 30 years ago, and you went to a bowl game, it was like another set of spring practices. You were going to use all 15 practices, and there were these legendary stories. I'm sure some of them were grossly exaggerated, but of how these coaches would make these practices so physical, like Ali versus Frazier, and now. All right, when you look at the evolution of college football, and you could argue there have been more changes in the last 3 years than in my first 27 years of doing this, your approach to bowl games has to change and evolve and adapt, just like how college football continues to evolve. So now it's much more of focus on fundamentals. Make sure that you are getting the very best guys in the best position to give yourself a chance to win the game. It's a lot like a first game mentality in terms of great fundamentals, being very sound in what you do, and then being ready for situations. And I haven't had a chance, quite frankly, to watch a lot of these early bowl games that have gone on. Hopefully, we get a little break here at the end of the week. I'll get a chance to watch some, but a lot of these games turn out to be like the early season games where special teams gets magnified. The things that you might do to beat yourself get magnified in all three phases of the game. So I think it's real important as you're plugging in some different guys and trying to put yourself in position to be successful to win a bowl game, that you're very aware of situations and that you're very sound with your fundamentals. when we were waiting for our bowl opponent to be announced, and you're kind of thinking through the possibilities of who it could be and where you could go, there was one team that kept, as I was doing my recruiting travel and things that first week, there was one team that kept popping up like, all right, if we get these guys, we're going to have a really, really big challenge on our hands, and that was the Fighting Irish. This is an outstanding special teams unit. When you look at their team in general, they are a very big, physical, rugged, hard-playing team, and that is very much reflected on their special teams units. They strain in coverage. They strain to block field goals. They strain to block punts. They create some really challenging matchups for you with their physicality, their effort, their length. And that doesn't just happen by showing up. Yes, they have good players, but this is a new coaching staff who has put a great emphasis on physical play and carrying over that physical play to special teams. They have sort of skyrocketed in 1 year to a top 10 special teams unit in all the different analytics rankings. So certainly have a ton of respect for what they do and how they do it and how hard they play. I mean, these guys have blocked more punts than anybody in the country. It's like as many punts as Jerry Seinfeld had girlfriends. Okay, so it's about every episode. You know, every episode they've got a new block punt, just like Jerry had a new girlfriend. So we got our hands full there. They've got a good returner, a bigger guy back there who can make you miss and break tackles. Their specialists are very good. They hit a lot of touchbacks, so there's not many kickoff return opportunities. And if there is one, when there is one, you gotta be really, really sound fundamentally to block them up. So this is a big challenge for our entire football team, but especially from the special teams standpoint. And I'm glad we got a little bit more time to get ready. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions you guys have.
Get the first one. I guess, Pete, you mentioned almost a new roster, kind of, and the defensive backs have been kind of hit hard. You've spent a lot of time with those freshman defensive backs, the Kawan Banks, the Keenan Nelsons. What have been your impressions of that group as they probably transition now to playing a little bit more defense?
I think it's a great group, not just athletically, but they're a fun group to be around every day. We have to remind ourselves sometimes that they are freshmen and that there's still a lot of growth and development that's going to happen and needs to happen as those guys come along. Some of them obviously got thrown into the fire here very early. You know, in an ideal situation, and I touched on sort of the progress and growth of the program earlier and how it's still a work in progress. I think this is a great example. Ideally, those guys come in and they're playing some on the scout team this year. They're maybe getting on some special teams units this year. Next year, they're playing on special teams. Maybe they're rotating in, playing, parts of games on defense, and then evolving into starting roles, right? If they're good enough, if they're talented enough, if they're learning and growing the way they should eventually grow into starters. And you hope that there's a real process to making that happen. But the way it played out for some of those guys this year, they went from maybe starting on the kickoff team in the opening game against Georgia State to 2 or 3 weeks later, they're playing the whole game on defense. So a few of those guys have actually missed a step or two in the process. And I hope that 2 or 3 years from now, there is more time to truly develop those guys before we put them into those kind of roles. So part of it is a credit to them that they were able to handle that pretty well for us this year. Here we are sitting here, an 8-win team in December, despite having to play a lot of young players this year. And then for some of the other guys, like Keenan Nelson, for example, there has been pretty steady growth over the course of this season to where they've played some special teams. are maybe now moving into position where they can play some for us on defense and special teams. And I think we have to remind those guys when we come back and start spring practice that they're still just rising sophomores or rising redshirt freshmen, and just because they've played a lot doesn't mean they've arrived. But it's a great group, and it's a group that's certainly helping us now and will help us even more down the road.
Do you have any concern that once Grayson Howard gets up there for the first time, folks are going to want to hear from him more than they're going to want to hear from you?
No. Pup is he's a man, though. You know what I mean? He's a man. I mean, this guy, and we're allowed to talk about these guys now because they've signed. For a lot of these guys, we have been recruiting them since we arrived 2 years ago. And it's so neat to see that now they're actually here and a part of the family. And we're trying to recruit personalities and character. We're trying to recruit guys that are fun to be around. And yes, I actually said to Pup this morning, I said, by the end of spring practice, you will be teaching me. And so I would gladly pass off a Wednesday or Thursday coordinator press conference to Pup when he's good and ready to handle it. But man, like if we can have some guys like that covering kickoffs for us next year, that's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. So we're working hard at it, and it's great to see guys like that that you've invested so much in building those relationships with, and they are such special people in addition to being great football players and looking like SEC football players, as he already does. You actually know that they're a part of your family now. That's really, really cool stuff.
And you're obviously involved with some guys from the Northeast and recruiting them, whether it's Gargiulo or maybe some of the guys from the DMV area. Just can you speak to sort of your involvement with those guys and what do you think they'll bring to the program as well?
Sure. So it really is a team effort that we all do. And, it might be a guy from Maryland that's a defensive end, and Sterling Lucas is up there a bunch. And I may know the high school coach from my initial travels there and identifying somebody. And then the position coach obviously is highly involved. The coordinator, Clayton White, is traveling all over the place all the time. Shane is obviously out in the periods when he's allowed to be out. And the other guy who does a lot of work in that DMV area that should get a lot of credit is Torian Gray. So, I might be in Pittsburgh or Boston or Philadelphia, and Torian might be there in the DMV going around to a lot of those schools. So we really try to work off each other, and who's got a contact, who knows a high school coach, who knows the area, what position does this guy play. And a lot of that goes back to Taylor Edwards and his team, who lay out a lot of the logistics to make sure that we're being as efficient and effective as we can be. And then from there, it's just a lot of effort to build the relationships with these guys. You asked about Nick Gargiulo. We have a connection with the head coach at Yale. So that was great to have that kind of background information, to be learning about Nick. It only takes about 5 minutes once you meet Nick to know this is a real special guy. I think Shane alluded to this with you guys yesterday. There's only one captain every year at Yale. There's been 149 football teams, and I played against a lot of those football teams back at my Dartmouth and Lehigh days. And some of the most impressive young men you'll ever come across play on those teams. And if you're a captain, you really are special, and you can imagine the kind of scrutiny that you're being evaluated by with your coaches and your teammates. So for this guy to come from blue-collar roots and to become a starter and a captain there says a lot, and that's, to me, exactly the kind of veteran presence that you want to bring in, so that the younger guys you have, like the Ryan Brubakers and the Grayson Maines, and guys you think are going to be really good offensive linemen, you're giving them a little bit more time to grow and develop, and maybe not throw them into the fire quite as quickly as DQ Smith and Nick Amamori had to do this year. So excited to have Nick on board. And then, the other side of the spectrum, Tyshawn Russell is a real late bloomer, a guy that it's refreshing to know that you could still go out and find somebody in recruiting in this day and age of everything's posted on the internet, right? Everything's posted on social media. A guy gets an offer somewhere, and before you know it, he's got 15 other offers because somebody just saw that you offered, so they're going to offer and get in the hunt. It's refreshing to know that there are still some sleepers out there, late bloomers, guys that get opportunities because they had great senior years. And in that particular case, that's a high school coach that I go back to the late 90s with, in the old Bishop McDevitt, which used to be in downtown Harrisburg, and used to be a little, one of those little dungeons that you'd go into to meet with the head coach, and the paint falling off the walls and the old pictures, scotch taped up on the walls and things. And now Bishop McDevitt is a beautiful new suburban school, and they're doing some great things and won a state championship this year. And Tyshawn was obviously a big part of that. So it's our reputation up there as an institution, our popularity with students from the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast is great. So it's been a really good fit for me in the 2 years I've been here to be able to go back up there to places I'm comfortable with, kind of get back into my Northeast mindset with the traffic and the tolls and the, eating at diners and things like that, and get back in there and see some people that I've got long-standing relationships with.
Pete, Shane was saying, Shane was saying yesterday just how excited you would be by adding so many tight ends to the roster, and how crucial they are to special teams. Just, I know you guys added quite a few players at that position. What do you make of the guys you've added, and how do you see them fitting in with this team?
Well, you bring up such a good point that there's been many a week the last 2 years where you're looking for a certain body type for a certain role. And I think I may have shared with you guys before, you have your numerical roster, you have your heights and weights, you have your positions, you have your year in the program. We have a different kind of roster that we use on special teams, and it's a body type roster. So you have a certain job description for somebody on a unit. It might be a guy you're trying to set up to go block a punt, and you're looking for a certain body type to do that, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, we don't have somebody who can get that done for us. So maybe that limits your options in terms of how you attack somebody on special teams. So no, I think there's I mentioned a great team effort in recruiting, but when you look at the job that Sterling Lucas and Jody Wright and Jimmy Lindsay did in this class, I mean, in my mind, those guys are rock stars, because they were able to, and among others, I'm not trying to leave anybody else out, but those three guys really made some things happen, building relationships with some really players that we need on this roster, and it's a credit to them and so many others that we were able to get pen to paper yesterday. But I'm excited to see the evolution of that tight end room, that edge room, the linebacker room. Those are guys that we need more of those guys on our special teams units. And so starting in the spring and then adding to it in the summer, it's going to be really exciting.
Shane mentioned yesterday that he had, you and Clayton White watch film on Mario Anderson, kind of that transfer process. What was that like, looking at that from a special teams perspective maybe, and what did jump out to you about Mario Anderson?
Yeah, so I always take it as a real compliment when Shane or Taylor walks down and says, hey, would you take 15 minutes and watch this guy? We want to get your input on it. And that was the case. And a good player is a good player. And yes, maybe the competition level isn't quite what we're going to see from Georgia or Florida or somebody like that. But a good player is a good player, and the power, the vision, the short area quickness, the ability to change speeds. Those were all really, really positive things that I saw with his film. And I remember watching it and saying, with every game he played, because our people do a really thorough job of breaking this all down, and it seemed like from the first game of the season to the last game of the season, he just got better and better and better, right? And a good running back is a guy who's going to be durable and reliable and somebody that is going to be able to play at 90%. And to me, this is a guy who's shown that he can do that. So now the challenge for him is going to be stepping up and doing that at a higher level with greater competition. He has returned some kicks in his career, which is great because we're always looking to add depth and competition to that returner group as well.
Pete, what do you make overall of the adjustments that Clayton White and the staff on defense had to make with all the changes this year, and how much will that help them having to make even more adjustments against a formidable foe in the Gator Bowl?
I think you make a great insight there. That's one of Clayton's greatest strengths from what I see being around him for 2 years. He plans extremely well during the week, but he also knows going in that you're going to see new and different stuff. And his ability to make adjustments within the system, not draw up new stuff in the dirt, but to pull within the things that our guys are comfortable doing, and to go out there in the second half of a game and try to take away some of the things that may have been giving us issues in the first half. He's one of the best I've ever been around at doing that. And that same first game mentality that we talked about on special teams, that applies to offense and defense as well. So what they're seeing now. You've had time while we've been on the road recruiting, the GAs, the analysts, they've been doing as much self-scout as they have been doing Notre Dame scout. So you come back off the road and you're looking at, okay, what were our issues and what are some of the things that Notre Dame might do to attack us? And how can, given the personnel that we have going into this game, how can we anticipate some of those things? And like I say, I think the world of Clayton as a man and as a coach, and I know he'll put our guys in the very best position he can to give us a chance to be successful in this game. And let me preempt and say I'm not calling any plays on offense in this game. So if you guys, I have no idea who is. I'm Sergeant Schultz. I have no idea, but I could just tell you it's not going to be me.
Shane Beamer climbed a tree twice to land a recruit in this class. What's the weirdest thing you've done to try to land a guy?
Yeah, there's always some good recruiting stories. I remember being at Dartmouth, and it was really hard to get to Dartmouth. There were no direct flights into Hanover, New Hampshire, and I had this guy who was coming in from a prep school, and so he had to take a bus to a plane from LaGuardia, and then he had to fly to Boston and then take a puddle jumper up to Hanover. Well, the weather got bad, his flight got canceled, and I said, Adam, listen, we got a bus ticket for you. You just need to take a shuttle to this bus and then get on this bus and you'll be up in Hanover in 2.5 hours. And he had no money. So then I had to coach him up, and this was before cell phones, right? So now we're doing this at pay phones. He's got to talk his way onto the bus. The bus driver lets him on. He gets to the other bus where we have a ticket waiting for him. We finally get him up to Hanover. He misses dinner that Friday night and everything. I'm thinking there's no way we're going to get this guy. Well, Sunday morning he commits. The weather's still real bad. His flight out gets canceled. So I said, screw it, I'm going to just drive you back. So I drove through a snowstorm in a Toyota Corolla about 6.5 hours to get this guy back to his prep school, which was in one of those sort of remote locations in upstate New York. And when it was all, he just slept the whole way home. He was probably up all weekend up in Hanover. So I had to drive him 6.5 hours drop him off, hope this guy was still going to be committed. And, you know, after all this planes, trains, and automobiles that he had to go through just to get to campus, and then drove myself back to Hanover, got back there about 1 in the morning, and that was that. But that's the stuff you remember, right? That's the cool stuff about what we do. And there's a lot more technology involved now, right? There's a lot more people involved because you've got all these different little sub-departments within your program. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to the relationships.
And you mentioned not calling plays, but Dow Loggins is here, and he'll call plays next year. What are your initial impressions of him and the time you've been able to spend with him?
Yeah, very excited. So I can't tell you how many people texted me and called me, you know, once they heard that we were hiring him, and mutual friends and people that just spoke so highly of him as a person and as a coach. And the very next morning, I was in here early, and he comes down to my office and sat down, and we talked for almost an hour and a half about everything, about family, about life, about coaching philosophy, about the personnel on our team. And as I was sitting there getting to know him, I just kept thinking about what a great fit this guy is for this organization, and how much I'm going to look forward to getting to know him better. His wife was in for a couple of days and spent time around the other wives, and you can just tell the whole family is going to be a great fit for the culture here.
What was your reaction to what the university did for you and your contract, and perhaps the recognition of by the organization for what special teams means to the success of this program?
Yeah, I was actually hoping you didn't ask that. Yeah, I don't quite know what to say other than very grateful, very appreciative. You know, it's been a great 2 years. You know, we really love it here, and we want to be here, and really enjoy the guys I get to work with every day. And you know, I've been doing this a long time, so it wasn't easy to walk away from a head coaching position several years ago and kind of well into my career take on a new challenge, a very different direction. And I wanted the opportunity to coach at the highest level, and there were some family reasons involved with my children and so forth to make the move that we made. And you know, when you do something, you're all in, and you want to do it as well as you possibly can. And sometimes you're a great fit, sometimes you're not. Sometimes things go smoothly, sometimes they don't. And so you know, it hasn't always been an easy road. It usually isn't for anybody in any profession. There's always going to be some challenges and some adversity. But I really felt good about Shane and about coming here 2 years ago. And I really felt good about how we would be committed to the cause and make special teams a priority here. And everything is lived up to that. And aside from the football stuff, it's the people. It's every layer of it. It's the people that in our neighborhood. It's the alums of this university. It's the fans of this university. It's the athletic administration. It's the faculty. It's the staff. It's obviously the people in this building that you get to work with every day. So, you know, you know when something feels right, and you know when it's fulfilling to come to work every day, and this has certainly been that. And you know, to see the administration and Shane being proactive about trying to keep us here, that just is kind of the cherry on top to everything. So we're very grateful, and we know there's a lot of hard work ahead, starting with this bowl game, and we'll definitely be put to the test here on December 30th. Thank you, though. Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.